But it brings up a really common struggle, maybe the central struggle for knowledge workers today: information overload. How do you know when you've done enough analysis? When does productive research tip over into just procrastinating with data? It's such a critical balancing act. We need to be really clear about the difference. Let's define productive information gathering. This is seeking data that does one of a few specific things.
Okay, like what? One, it genuinely might alter your success criteria. Step 3. 2, it could significantly change the assessed probability of one of your scenarios. Step 4, playing out. 3, it represents actionable, credible expert opinion you didn't have before. Or 4, it directly helps you prepare better for the known risks, refining your mitigation plans.
So the information has to plug directly back into the framework.
It has to serve the system.
Hmm.
If it doesn't do one of those things, it's likely drifting into analysis paralysis.
And what does that look like?
That's researching stuff that honestly won't change your fundamental choice. Like, spending hours debating the optimal slot for your resume when you haven't even decided which jobs to apply for.
Right. Focusing on trivial details.
Or seeking perfect certainty about things that are inherently uncertain. Collecting opinions from people who aren't really stakeholders or experts. Engaging in endless what-if planning without ever actually committing to action. It feels productive, but it's really just procrastination wearing a suit.
Okay, so how do you break that cycle? James developed a filter, you said.
He did. To stop himself from falling into that trap, he used what we can call the information sufficiency test. Before spending time gathering more data, he forced himself to answer 4 blunt questions.
Let's hear them. Question 1.
What specific decision criteria from step 3 would this new information actually affect? If the answer is none, then stop. The info is irrelevant to the decision as defined.
Okay, makes sense. Question 2.
How likely is this information, realistically, to change my final choice? If it's exploring a tiny edge case or something with a very low probability, the research probably isn't worth the time.
Question 3.
What is the cost of delay versus the potential value of this additional certainty? This is huge. Time is a resource. Opportunities expire. If another week of research might only increase your confidence from, say, 80% to 81%, but it means missing the application deadline.
The cost of delay is way higher than the benefit.
Exactly. You have to weigh the diminishing returns of information against the real cost of inaction.
And the 4th question, the tough one, the moment of truth. Am I researching or am I procrastinating? You have to be brutally honest with yourself. Is this driven by a genuine need for critical data or by fear of making the commitment? That requires some real self-awareness.
It does. And applying this filter consistently leads to a practical operating principle. The 80% threshold, meaning
Meaning that for most complex, high-stakes decisions, you can and probably should make the call when you feel you have about 80% of the ideal information or certainty.
80%. That might feel uncomfortable for perfectionists.
It does. But waiting for 100% certainty is usually a fantasy. It doesn't exist. And the effort required to get from 80% to maybe 90% often takes longer than getting the first 80%, and the marginal value is much lower. Chasing that last 20% is often where opportunities are lost.
Okay, I like the 80% rule, but how do you enforce it? Especially when a decision feels massive and scary. Do you use a schedule? Yes, structure helps manage the anxiety. We recommend the decision timeline framework, especially for those big type 2 decisions. Give yourself a hard deadline, maybe 4 weeks max, like James did.
Break it down by week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Week 1, classification, stakeholders, initial criteria, steps 1, 2, 3. Week 2, focused, essential information gathering based on week 1. Week 3, scenario analysis, contingency planning, risk mitigation, step 4. Week 4, final review, apply the regret minimization filter, step 5, and then decide, commit. That timeline provides the external structure to push past the internal desire for just one more piece of information.
Exactly. And that leads to the final piece here, the commitment principle. What's that?
Once you've gone through a rigorous systematic process like this, and
Yeah.
you make the decision based on that 80% threshold and your timeline, you have to shut down the internal debate. You commit.
Full stop on the second guessing. Full stop. You pour your energy into making the chosen path successful, not into wondering if you should have picked the other door. That very commitment, that focused energy, actually becomes a factor in creating a successful outcome. It prevents the energy drain of doubt and allows you to execute effectively.
The framework gives you the confidence to commit, and the commitment helps drive the success. It's a virtuous cycle.
That's exactly it.
So this framework, it's not just a one-and-done tool for a single decision, is it? You mentioned James used it to learn and improve over time.
Absolutely. It becomes a personal operating system. The key is creating a feedback loop. James implemented what we call the decision documentation system, basically keeping records to track his own patterns and get better.
This is where the compound learning really happens.
Exactly. The core of it is the decision journal. For every major type 1 or type 2 decision he made after adopting the system, he recorded several key things.
Like what? What goes in the journal?
The context. What was the situation? The options he seriously considered. The specific success criteria he used. Step 3. A summary of his analysis process, the scenarios, the stakeholder inputs. The final choice he made, and crucially, the reasoning behind it at the time.
Documenting the why seems important. Very. Then he recorded his expected outcomes. What did he project for the best, expected, and worst cases? And here's the vital part. He scheduled check-ins to record the actual results after, say, 6 months, 12 months, and 24 months. Comparing the forecast to reality. Why is that step so critical? Isn't it kind of painful if you look back and realize you were way off?
It can be humbling, for sure, but it's absolutely essential for improvement. If your expected outcomes consistently miss the mark compared to actual results, the problem isn't just bad luck. It signals a potential flaw in your process. Maybe your criteria were wrong, maybe your risk assessment was biased, maybe your scenario planning was too optimistic or pessimistic.
It allows for pattern recognition in your own thinking.
Radical pattern recognition. After about 18 months of keeping this journal, James started seeing clear, personal biases and blind spots he never would have noticed otherwise.
Really? What kind of specific patterns did he uncover in his own decision history?
Well, a few things were really telling. He found he consistently underestimated his own and his family's adaptability to new situations. Whenever he factored in the pain of change or settling in, he tended to overweight that difficulty by a significant margin, maybe 40%.
Interesting. So he was more resilient than his cautious planning assumed.
Exactly. He also saw a pattern of consistently overvaluing security and stability, and correspondingly undervaluing potential high-growth opportunities. His analysis, pre-journaling, leaned too conservative.
And what else?
He realized his best decisions, the ones with the highest positive impact long-term, almost always involved taking calculated, well-analyzed risks that had significant upside. It suggested his natural comfort zone was actually holding him back from optimal outcomes. And, maybe revealingly, his decisions tended to have better outcomes when his wife was more deeply involved in the analysis phase, not just informed at the end.
Wow, that's incredibly specific, data-driven insight into his own mind. So how did discovering these patterns lead to actual framework refinement? He changed his process.
He did. He didn't just note the patterns. He built corrections into his system. Since he knew he tended to overweight security, he started adding an explicit growth potential multiplier during the criteria weighting phase for certain types of decisions.
Actively counteracting his bias. Precisely. He implemented stricter personal decision deadlines to fight his known tendency to procrastinate research when feeling risk-averse. And he added a formal step after the systematic analysis. An intuitive check. Wait, after all this systematic rigor, he added intuition back in. Sort of. It wasn't about letting gut feeling override the data. It was a final check. Okay, I've done the work, I've run the numbers, I've planned the scenarios. Now, stepping back, does this feel directionally right based on everything I've learned? He saw it as using his intuition not as the primary driver, but as a kind of subconscious summary, a final check informed by the data, not in place of it. Okay, that makes sense. Using intuition as a final filter on the systematic output.
Yeah. And all these little refinements, driven by his journaling, created that compound learning effect. Each decision helped make the next one slightly better, slightly more calibrated to his own psychology and the realities he faced. That's powerful. Okay, let's pivot to one last major area of complexity. Decisions involving other people, partners, families, teams at work. How do you use this system when you're not the only one impacted? This requires the stakeholder alignment strategy, crucial area, because misalignment is where even well-analyzed decisions fall apart in implementation. The first step has to be transparency and clarifying roles.
What do you mean by clarifying roles? You need to clearly define who are the primary stakeholders, the ones who directly bear significant costs or benefits, and who are secondary stakeholders more peripherally affected. Then, the potentially tricky part, clarifying decision authority. Who actually gets to make the final call?
Exactly. And does anyone have formal veto power? Getting this clear up front avoids massive confusion and resentment later. I thought I had a say in this kind of problems.
Right, so thinking back to James and the relocation decision with his family, how did he structure that family decision process using these ideas?
He used a pretty clear three-phase approach. Phase 1 was information sharing. He laid out the opportunity, his objective analysis, the criteria, the scenarios, including the worst-case plan, before he strongly stated his own preference.
So presenting the business case first, not selling his desired outcome.
Exactly. It was about sharing his analytical journey transparently. Phase 2 was collaborative analysis. This is where his wife's and, to some extent, his children's concerns became formal inputs.
How did that work practically?
Her concerns about stability and school quality weren't just heard. They were built directly into the success criteria, step 3, and the risk mitigation plan, step 4. They researched schools together. They created the budget for the financial cushion together. It shifted from being James's potential job change to our family's strategic evaluation of an opportunity.
Turning stakeholders into collaborators in the analysis. That's the goal. Then came phase 3, decision authority clarification. He was explicit. Given the huge impact on the family's daily life, his wife had effective veto power. If, after the collaborative analysis, she had fundamental, overwhelming reservations, the move was off the table, regardless of the financial upside. And the children.
Their input was taken very seriously, especially regarding their fears about moving. But their role was non-determinative. Their concerns directly led to specific mitigation plans, like finding specific clubs or activities for them immediately upon arrival, planning visits back home, rather than giving them a vote on the core decision.
That clarity around who decides, who influences, and who has veto seems key.
It is, and it all points to the underlying alignment principle.
Which is?
Decisions that affect multiple people work best when everyone involved understands the reasoning, the data considered, the risks acknowledged, and the plans in place, even if they don't personally control the final outcome. That transparency and inclusion built through the systematic process is what generates buy-in.
Buy-in for implementation, which is where the real work happens after the choice is made.
Exactly. A decision without aligned implementation is just a wish. Hashtag tag outro. So wrapping this all up, what's the big message for you, our listener, to take away from this deep dive?
For me, it seems crystal clear. Stop just hoping for good luck in your big life choices. Start building systematically. That's really it. Your life is arguably the most important, complex project you'll ever manage. Treating your major decisions with the kind of strategic rigor that successful businesses use isn't being cold or robotic, it's being effective.
In this systematic framework, these 5 steps, they don't guarantee a perfect outcome, right? Because the future is always uncertain.
No guarantees on the outcome. But what the system does provide is clarity. It provides preparedness. It gives you the ability to maximize your potential upside while rigorously understanding and mitigating the downside. It minimizes that paralyzing fear of the unknown.
By classifying, setting criteria, planning for different scenarios, involving stakeholders, you're transforming these huge, scary life choices from random bolts from the blue into calculated strategic investments in your future self. It gives you agency.
It's the structure that allows you to confidently choose growth, maybe calculated risk, over just sticking with the status quo out of fear.
Well said. So, for our final provocative thought today, something for you to take away and actually do.
Okay, let's hear it. We want you to go back to step 1, classification. Think about one major impending choice in your life right now. Maybe it's a potential job change, a move, a big financial decision, starting a family. Ask yourself, is this truly a type 2, largely irreversible decision? Okay, identify one big one.
If it is type 2, then take the next step we discussed today. Start defining your explicit, measurable success criteria. Step 3. What does good actually look like for you in this specific situation? Quantify it, and maybe even start sketching out your worst-case scenario. Step 4 and the first few steps of your action plan if that happened.
Just starting the process on one decision.
Just start, because the ultimate goal here isn't just about making the right choice today. It's about building a life where years from now you look back and you don't have that gnawing regret about the opportunities you were too afraid or too disorganized to take. It's about owning your path